A couple of bottles of wine, take them to your table because we will be having a slide presentation. So have some wine or some passion fruit punch at your table if you like. There's some hors d'oeuvres on your table also. You'll find your name tag at your table. If you don't like where you're sitting, well, switch for somebody.
Oh, yeah, I looked over there and I said, who's that sitting at our table?
I'll take that.
Somebody was eating at our table. Oh, my Portuguese name is
Evening, baby. Did that go on the TV? I knew you were. Welcome. Yes. I can go now? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
It's not Friday. Madiera is Harley. Madiera Island, except for go over there, you go. I figured we'd go see both.
We're down there tickets right now.
I'm over to mainland and see that too. You guys have nothing to do, right?
Some of you are here because you just want to drink a lot of wine. Some of you are here because you're familiar with Doug's cooking and you know it's fabulous, which it is, and you're here to eat his food. And some of you are here because there's a longing in your heart to be in Portugal, as myself. I'm very American, but my heart belongs in Portugal. And this night we are going to highlight a beautiful island. I've never been there. I wish I could go someday. The island of Madeira. It is affectionately referred to as the Pearl of the Atlantic. And we have two wonderful ladies who are going to present a slide presentation, and they're going to take you on a tour of the island. And I guarantee you, when you're done seeing the slide presentation, you will want to go there. Before we start, I would like to thank a few people, because this evening could not be possible without the help of several people here in this room. First of all, my decorations committee, which is consisted of Dolores Greensley. She does enough work for about 3 people, so she's my committee. She did a lot of help in gathering a lot of these artifacts, and I want to personally thank you, Dolores, for that. Most of these artifacts came from 2 people in this room. Where's Lee? There's Lee. Most of these belong to her. They are beautiful. We had a tough time putting these up without wanting to sneak a few off in our car and take them with us. They're just really very beautiful. Also, another person donated some. They're not here yet. They have some difficulty getting here. Marie and Al Balshore, they also donated quite a few of the artifacts here. John Bento donated this one over here that he's going to loan to me after this evening, right?
Yeah.
And also, who else? Mary Madiera, who's also not here yet. She'll be arriving shortly. And I can't continue without thanking my husband. He's also been my cheerleader, my decorations committee, and we were here late last night. He's been an incredible help, and he's my inspiration. Thank you, honey.
Wow.
There's Mary. And they're not here, but many of you are familiar with Doug and Barbara's fine cooking. I want to thank their parents. They're here, Delano and Dorothy. They did a fine job in raising their son. He is just one of the most warm-hearted, kind, generous people I know. And he goes out of his way to make this evening very special, and we could not do it at all without him. And I know that even this man here cut down some laurel branches so we would have laurel branches for the, what do you say? How do you say it? The spadata. So thank you, Delano. Who else do I need to thank here? Very special lady is here, Fernanda Enes. I have just gotten the chance to meet this wonderful lady. She's right here with the scarf around her neck. When she found out about this dinner, she single-handedly made the bread and made the couscous and brought it up here. She traveled from Hayward to be here with us. She is from Madeira. Don't leave this room without saying hello to this woman. She is Miss Madeira. She's a wonderful woman. A labor of love is what she did today. And now, I think we're ready to introduce our speakers. We have, it was not a typo. Yes, there was a typo in the invitation, but their names are not a typo. It's Cynthia Vieira Deluge. She's right there. Raise your hand. And Virginia Deluge Vieira. When I first contacted Virginia, she was so excited about doing this evening. I explained it to her, and she just said, yes, yes, let's do it, let's do it. And they put this evening together, so the rest of the evening it belongs to them. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for putting this together and making this evening possible. If you don't have wine at your table, please feel free to get up and put some wine at your table. The lights are going to go down shortly. We're going to have some slides. So make yourself comfortable, enjoy yourself, and thank you for being here.
embroidering these things just to adorn their homes. In addition to that, the Madeiran people are very religious, as attested to by all the festivals that they have on their island. They love to go on pilgrimages. They love to sing. They love to dance. They find always a reason to sing and dance. And with this, I'm going to turn the program over to my colleague who's sitting over there, and so that she can start taking you on a tour of the island. Cynthia, come on up. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this slide presentation so that people don't necessarily get bored. Because if I see anybody sleeping, I'll blame it on the wine and not on myself. But anyway, this is a set of slides that I took over several trips to Madeira, and I think that you'll all find what the rest of the world has found about this island is that it's a magical place, and with every turn in the road, it's a new scene, it's breathtakingly beautiful. The English started to discover it as a tourist spot when England colonized India, and on their way back to England, the English colonists, they would stop in the island of Madeira, and they would climatize themselves for the final leg of their journey back to England. The difference in the climates, obviously, between India and England was very great. Madeira has a very moderate climate. It's on the same latitude as Bermuda, so you can imagine, that it's comfortable. And if you've been there, you know that any time of year, pretty much, the weather is pretty satisfactory. The island is 13 miles wide at its widest point and 33 miles long at its longest point, and the altitude of the island is approximately like 6,000 feet. So sometimes you can get there in February and the top is covered with snow, but you can stand in the city of Funchal and see the snow behind you, and you're in 80-degree weather. So, it's got everything you'd ever want or need except a good beach. So let me start this, and I'm going to try to make this the least painful experience of your life. All right, this is in the city of Funchal. Funchal is from the word funch, which some of you may know. You probably had soup made of that at some point in your life. But it's the plant the cities that you see noted on this map are what they call sitios, or they're sort of like county seats. And they represent a location where one can find governmental offices and like the main church for the area. And there's a number of these points along the island. Now, this is these slides are set up to sort of take you around the island, and this is the one and only airport for the island of Madeira. This is known as Santa Catarina Airport, and it's equivalent pretty much to landing on an aircraft carrier. It's known for one place in the world that whenever the plane lands and you've made it the landing successfully, which has been every landing except for 2 or 3, the passengers are known to applaud the pilot for a safe landing. So it's really quite an experience landing on this island. There's no question. The first set of wheels touched down right beyond that W, and they stopped just beyond that rise in the airport runway. And there's a small terminal, and most of the visitors to Madeira are Europeans. They discovered the island, like I said, some time ago. The French love it. The Germans are there. They have colonies on the island, and they seem to get along quite well. The Americans haven't discovered this, thank God. They're still going to Hawaii. Now, as you drive into the city of Funchal from the airport, you see scenes like this along the way. And you know, it's quite a beautiful sight as you approach the city. There's the harbor of Funchal, and this is you know, a cruise ship spot for many of these relocation cruises between Europe and the Caribbean when the ships change for the season. And many times these ships will stop in Madeira. So if you want a cheap cruise and you want a day in Madeira, this is the way to go. All right, this is in Funchal, and Funchal is known very much for its high-quality hotels and also for smaller, more cozy hotels known as residencials, which are much cheaper and offer you probably a little more flavor of the island than these nice high-grade hotels. Now, the English have, there's one hotel in Madeira known as the Reed's Palace. Winston Churchill was a frequenter of that hotel. He painted many scenes of Madeira. It was one of his favored vacation spots. These are the hills behind the city of Madeira. These are residential areas. The city is shaped something like an amphitheater. Downtown is near the seashore, and the hills above it are the homes of many Madeira people, some of which still have land where they grow crops like bananas and grapes. Now, the city of Funchal is probably one of the most urbanized areas besides it being an agricultural area. It's very densely populated, and the people of Madeira have gone everywhere in the world, basically. I mean, they have, because of financial problems and economic difficulties on the island over the years, many of them have migrated to other parts of the world. Many have gone to Brazil, to South Africa. A large number of them are in Venezuela, in France, in Germany, different parts of the world. And as they have encountered either economic or political problems in those places where they've lived, where they've migrated to, they come back to Madeira. Many of them are filling in the open space with additional homes for their families as they return to the island. So it's, you know, it's the story of migration and immigration is an interesting one, and we're all a part of that story. But I don't know how many of us are willing to go back to our native islands. Okay, this is downtown in Funchal. There's many historical buildings. That church beyond this, you know, the back of the picture there, that's the cathedral, and that bishop of Funchal, who is the bishop of the entire island, is located at that church. This is a government building. You'll note that in Portugal, if you've not been there yourself, these photos will show you that the use of white-washed buildings and the basalt, the dark stone outlining the building, is very typically Portuguese. Here's an example of one of those basalt and white-walled buildings, the Bank of Portugal. This is equivalent to our Federal Reserve Bank, and in front of the bank is a statue of João Gonçalves Zarco, who was the discoverer of of Madeira. And he's professed to be a Portuguese Jew. As I understand it, about 70% of the Portuguese can trace their heritage back to Jews. So if you have people in your family that you think might be Jewish and they're cheap Portuguese, that may tell you the story. This is the Praça do Municipal, the center of the city, and the government buildings are surrounding that. This is an inside look at the Madeira Wine Association. Madeira wine is a very cherished kind of wine to many people. It's a fortified wine. Its demarcation is the island of Madeira, although there's some grown outside of Madeira. There's California Madeiras and some grown in other parts of the world. But the typical Madeira is a fortified wine from the island of Madeira. The Madeira Wine Association has been here for hundreds of years, and basically was a cooperative of growers that brought their grapes in for production into Madeira wines. These are some of the shopping districts in the city of Funchal. The city of Funchal has about 100,000 people. This is one of the traffic circles, and that is a statue of Christopher Columbus, who married the governor's daughter of the island of Madeira. He was of Italian descent. The last name is Perestrello. That means estrello, para estrellos, for the stars. They were a family of astronomers, and he was part of Prince Henry's School of Navigation and had access to all the charts and maps. And Mr. Columbus acquired that access through marrying his daughter. Christopher Columbus, the island of Port Santo, lived there for 5 years and studied the currents of the ocean out there with the help of the maps and charts of his father-in-law. Now this is one of the streets in Funchal that is actually a ravine, part of what was a ravine coming off the top of those mountains. This is a creek or river that comes through the city. It is covered with bougainvillea. This is in the area of the mercado, the city market. Now this is, if you want to see, real life in European cities, the thing to do is to get up early and go to the market. The market represents all the labors of the land, and those are the vegetables and fruits and animals that are raised on the land by the native people there. And Madeira is, because of its climate, very prolific in terms of what it can produce. Because it's at the latitude that it is, you do see some subtropical kinds of fruits and, well, not vegetables so much, but there are things like mangoes and papayas and that kind of thing that grows on the island. Flowers are another thing. Anthuriums, birds of paradise. The birds of paradise is the symbolic flower of the island. The government has adopted it as a symbol of Madeira, and they grow prolifically around the island. It's quite beautiful sights that you see in the island of Madeira. This is inside the marketplace. Now, some of you may know what these lovely things are. Yams, and you probably eat these. I don't know if you still got the guts to do it, but my mother does. And I never took to them too much, but if you want to know, the Portuguese love these, and the Azorians do too. And I got 3 grandparents that are from Madeira, and one that's from Terceira, and I haven't forgotten my Azorian roots, even though this is a Madeira show. So. But anyway, the people in Hawaii eat this too, and they call it poi there, but this is a staple. It's a starch, and it's very much a staple there in the island of Madeira, and it grows well there because of the climate and the moist ground, and it works out well there. This is the fish section, the fish market section of the market, the main city market in Madeira. There's no refrigeration in this market, and the fish go fast, let me tell you. And the way they're kept fresh is the vendors splash them with water, and they keep fresh. This fish here is known as the black scabbard fish, and it is not a delicacy because it's abundant, but it is the prized fish of the natives. They love to eat this. It's very light, flaky. It doesn't have a very fishy smell or taste to it. And the fishermen fish for these at night. When you're in Funchal, you can look out over the ocean at night. You can see lights out on the sea, and it's the fishermen who are fishing for these. These fish are found in 2 places in the world. One off the coast of the island of Madeira, the other place is off the coast of Japan. They swim very deep in the sea, and they're found in places like these 2 places where the islands rise at sharp angles out of the ocean, and the ocean is very deep surrounding the islands. So in the case of Japan, the case of Madeira, this is where this fish is found. Again, another shot, anthuriums and the native flowers around there. Now these ladies with their cute little outfits are from one village and one village only where they grow a lot of flowers. It's called Kamasha. They are wearing the typical costumes of Kamasha, and they are licensed to sell these flowers downtown, and only these ladies from that area can sell. So there are monopolies in Portugal. Now you've got plastic bags, this lady doesn't. But you do still see these scenes. The ladies come, and all the people come from different parts surrounding the city, but they do come from pretty far away, and a lot of these people, they take the bus or they walk. They don't necessarily have cars. And you know, you have the sophisticates living in the city, and then you have the people who are still tied to the land out in a lot of the villages. And this is, you know, just part of their way of life there. This is one of the scenes that you'll see in Madeira or in other parts of Portugal. This is the place at one time where people, before water was available in your home, you'd have to go to the fountain and get water, and it served a social purpose where a lot of information was exchanged amongst people. And you have to remember also that, you know, this wasn't a literate society until much later, and this served a social function and a way of communicating. So those fountains were very important. This is a scene looking towards the mountains behind the city of Funchal, and you can see how the urbanization has climbed up those mountains pretty well. But it's really quite something, you know, to have, it's like an amphitheater, a beautiful amphitheater. If you get up on top of those mountains and you look down, the sight is quite beautiful. Now, Madeira is a very, you know, hard place to live. The roads are hard to traverse. They wind and wind and wind, and you get on these buses, and what looks like a short trip can take you hours. This is changing because the government is trying to institute a lot of public projects that will help the people to live their lives a little easier there, and one is making more roads around the islands that go more directly. They're digging tunnels out and making bridges. So for the people that live there, it will be easier. For the tourists, I think they'll still take the windy route because they're the most scenic routes. These are some of the little narrow walkways around the island. People walk there. People are 90-something years old and they're strong as oxes because they walk up and down those hills all day long. This is up on top of the city of Funchal, known as the Mont. All right, this is inside the church. Nossa Senhora do Monte is the patron saint of the city of Funchal, and this is a historical church, not only for the fact that this saint is housed there, that little statue, and the people of Funchal have a great devotion to this saint, but this is also the burial place of one of the last of the Habsburgs, and the Austro-Hungarian emperor empire ended with the killing of that Franz Joseph, and that was the beginning of World War I. And this last emperor left Austria and came to live in Madeira, and eventually died there and is buried in this church. So it's rather historical. Every year in August 15th, Nossa Senhora do Monte is celebrated at the Festa do Monte, and the people come from all around to worship at the church and enjoy the festival. And this again is the statue of Our Lady of the Mountain. And there's an identical statue of this in Oakland, California, at a church that was started by Madeira people known as Our Lady, Mary Help of Christians in East Oakland. If anybody's familiar with Oakland at all, it was a big settlement of Madeira people. And this very statue, a replica, is there in the church on 23rd Avenue and the Nimitz Freeway. Typical Portuguese festa. Now, this is interesting because this is the kind of bread you'll be eating with your meal tonight, known as bol de coq. It's served along with carne do espit. That's the meat that's cooking in the fire on the spit. And this is typical of Madeira festas. These are vendors at the festa who sell these to people who come to enjoy the festa. They buy some bread and they buy some meat, and they enjoy. Now this is non-refrigerated meat, so I thought I would die, but I survived. The wine kills everything. You don't have to worry about it. And here are some of those vendors. Now another typical item in Madeira is known as malasadas, or feluas, I think, in the Azores. In Madeira they're round and they're not flattened out. They're basically the same thing. But these are what you find in Hawaii. There's a lot of people that went from Madeira to Hawaii as part of the immigration patterns, and you'll find round malasadas in the different islands of Hawaii. This is a scene going up into the higher elevations, into the mountains, and these men were repairing thatched roofs and getting ready for the winter time. These are some of the roads along the island. Now, Madeira is known for two things. One now is bananas. The other main crop there for many years were grapes for the Madeira wine. Madeira turned to bananas because it was more of a cash crop. The demand for Madeira had dropped for Madeira wine, and bananas became the real big agricultural item there. That has since changed with the European Economic Community importing and opening their markets up to Central American bananas. So those bananas you're buying at Safeway are also going to Europe, and the Madeira market for bananas has really dropped. So the big demand now is for Madeira wine, mostly from France, and the government is trying to encourage landowners to change over to grapes and get out of the banana business. So economics play a big role there. This is one of the more picturesque fishing villages. This is known as Câmara de Lobos, and this was a scene often painted by Winston Churchill. And these villages are pretty picturesque. Now, this is part of the scene of Madeira that, you know, one tends never to forget. The Azores have some scenes like this, but the mountainous nature of this island is breathtaking. This is all hand-done agriculture. There is no mechanized agriculture in the island of Madeira. People work at the edge of these cliffs. They have a hoe, and that's basically the tools that they use. There are no agricultural machines on this island. It's all done by those cute little Madeira backs. Again, this is looking towards Funchal from one of its highest points in terms of scenery that you could access as a tourist, and that is Cabo Jurão, which is the second highest sheer cliff in the world. Here's one of the sitios. This is one of the small towns that houses governmental offices and you know, has a larger school and that kind of thing. Now the road improvements are starting to show in the island, and people are moving about a little more easily there. My grandfather, who left this island when he was in his 20s, operated a boat from one of the small villages to Funchal, and he brought people and cargo back and forth. Now this is one of the only roads that goes directly through the middle of the island to the other side of the island, the north side, which is the windward side, and gets the rougher weather. But this is quite a scenic ride going through this valley. Now this typifies some of the small homes in the country. They are not accessible at all by automobile. People walk up and down these hills all the time to get to their homes, and they bring, you know, whatever supplies they need. They bring down their produce or whatever they're growing up there. They still do grow some sugar cane. When my mother lived in Madeira, sugar cane was one of the big crops. The world demand for sugar decreased. Sugar cane started to disappear, but they always have grown some to make cachaça with, if you know what that is, or aguardiente. They haven't forgotten that. You know? They need that in those cold winter nights. These are the typical street signs, or directions to the different villages. And there's a small street, you know, going down towards the ocean. I mean, you can hear a pin drop in these islands. They're, you know, and clean air. Sometimes you wonder what you're doing around here, I'm sure. Some of the scenes looking back, and imagine this is all hand agriculture. You walk up to your home, you know, it's quite a place. Another village, Lugar Baixo, where my grandfather comes from. Bananas, and these aren't the typical bananas as we know them. These are short, stubby bananas, sort of like a lot of Portuguese. but they're very sweet, and that's why they've been the favorite of Europeans.
Look at
This is-
Sol.
Yes, this is Ponte Sol. This is where the Bull de Coq lady, Mrs. Adish, comes from. And Virginia, her family's from there, and my family, my grandfather's from just below in this place called God Bosch. This is also the ancestral home of John Dos Passos, one of America's foremost writers. His father was the most well-known and most successful lawyer on Wall Street during the late 1800s, and this is a family who came from this village. And this is a typical Madeira beach. It's basically made of rocks. There's one sandy beach on this island, and it's only about 100 feet long. There is no sand on this island. These rocks are not jagged rocks. They're all smooth rocks, and these kids walk around them without any problem. Again, this is inside the village, and that house on the left with the oval shutter above that window is the family home of John Dos Passos, who wrote the 42nd Parallel, Manhattan Transfer, and a number of different literary works. Another view of one of the villages down below. Typical village, which, you get a church, a bank, a post office, a couple stores, and that's it. This is actually this is the home of my friend's grandparents. It was a bakery at one time. These are typical. This is up in Cainhas, up above Ponte Sol, high up in the mountains. Nice little village up there. And when you get to the top of the island, then you start to see, the weather and different kind of terrain. This is basically uninhabited areas, but they do graze animals up here. There's been some talk of trying to put another airport up here, but it would be impossible because of the fog that collects on the top of the island. These are some of the scenes when you take a taxi drive around the island. You come to these vistas that are just absolutely beautiful. You note the color of the water. This is blue, wonderful blue color, and it's great to watch the waves hit those rocks. Those are lava outcroppings, and you find this in the Azores too. It's pretty beautiful, quite beautiful. Now this sort of typifies sort of the migration patterns out of these islands. You see a real old house that was probably the great-grandparents, their children built a house. Then their children probably left, and they came back and built a big house on the right-hand side. So that typifies some of the movements from the island and back. This is on the windward side of the island. This is a road that was built in the 1800s all by hand. And basically you can get a car down here, and if you run into a bus, somebody's got to back up and find a little alcove where they can, sort of snuggle into and let the other vehicle pass them, and it's usually by an inch or two. So, you do get some real traffic problems along here. And there's the road as it goes on the right hand, on the windward side along that rock, carved out of a rock. One of the fun things is to go through the Portuguese car wash, which is the tunnel that has water falling on top of your car. When you come out, your car is washed. So that's pretty good. Here's one of the villages. This side of the island gives you a great feel of isolation. And they use what is dried heather to make these dividers between the crops so that the wind will not destroy the crops that they're growing out there. The wind blows quite a bit on this side. This is an inward look into the island from that very narrow road. You saw these ravines and deep indentations into the island carved out by years of water and rain, and it's really quite breathtaking. looking into one of those areas, and there's a road above you can see on the right-hand side. Now this is part of what is known as a lavada system, or the lavada system. It's a water system based on gravity. If you have property and you grow crops on the island of Madeira, you will get your water according to the municipal water system known as the lavada system. Basically, you have to be prepared at any time of the day or night that you are informed your water is going to come to water your crops. You get your kids out there, your wife, everybody goes to open these gates when that water starts coming and direct the water to the crops that need it. So it's quite a system that started in the 1800s, and this is how all of the agriculture receives its water. It starts at the high elevations and it all comes down through gravity. It's pretty excessive system all over. And you can see there's a pipe there that's bringing that water down. And this is one of the small villages in those ravines. This kind of typifies what might be a disappearing scene in those islands, but the typical widow of the fisherman. And this is the fishing village of Mashik, and these are very shy and very private people who, you know, have become widows of the sea, and they still wear these old long dresses and dress in black, and this lady happened to be on the way to church. This is another lonely person out there. This is in those more isolated areas, and I saw this woman down there, and you know, if we think our lives are dull sometimes, but you know, they're actually probably a lot healthier than us, and maybe in a lot of ways a lot happier. You know, we really don't know. Women do work hard, and all women that live in agricultural areas, I'm sure, do, and those that live in the suburbs do too. But this is a woman who is actually taking feed to an animal, a cow, and in the island of Madeira there are no cows that wander outside of their little pinedo, this little house that they make to house the cow, because they lose animals that fall off of those terraced ledges. So in Madeira, people don't have large herds of cattle or anything. They have a cow and they use the milk for their own consumption and they sell the rest. So you will not see a cow as you travel around this island. Again, more of the scenery that you find around the island. You know, Madeira is a favorite place of Northern Europeans. They love to go there. The weather's warm, and they hike in all of these high places. Once in a while, there's a missing German or Austrian, but the Portuguese always find them. They never lose their man. And you can see some standing on the rocks about 2/3 of the way down, almost in the middle of the picture. They're out on a cliff out there. It's those pale Northern Europeans that go home pretty tanned when they're finished with Madeira. This is the top of the island in February, and this was a major storm that had come through, and I was flying over the island and I saw that snow up there, and I thought, what did I do coming to the island at this time of year? But actually then, it was very nice down below, and this snow doesn't last too long, but it was quite a sight. I've never seen anything like it there. But you consider it's over 6,000 feet elevation there, so. Eucalyptus is another tree that grows there pretty commonly and is also used for firewood. Now this is some of the wicker work that Madeira is pretty well known for. The English love Madeira wicker, some of the best in the world. Unlike all the imports coming from the Orient, Madeira wicker is built to last. And the craftspeople are quite creative, and it's a cottage industry. This happens to be one of the main places where tourists can see this being done in the village of Camacho. But as you drive through the roads in Madeira, you'll see a lot of the wicker off on the side of the road that's being made at home, and they put it out there, and the trucks come by from the wicker works, pick everything up, and they export this wherever. If you find something you like, they'll send it directly to your home, no problem. This is a scene of Mexique, one of the larger sitios in the island, and this was the original capital of the island and before it moved to Funchal. It's also known for its fishing. Large-sized fishing boats work out of Mexico, and the typical Portuguese fisherman is preparing for the next day's journey to sea. This was a monument actually made as a promise by the Bishop of Funchal, who during the First World War, the Germans made an attempt to bomb this island, and he made the promise that if the island wasn't bombed, actually, affected by bombing, that he would build a statue, a memorial to the rosary, actually. And this is you see this, there's a rosary that surrounds this statue. This is one of the old hotels above the city of Funchal that the English frequented in its heyday, and the Portuguese, before they became a little more with it. They basically cowed down to these English. They carry them around in hammocks, or they transport them by these sleds, which have become typical tourist things for other people to enjoy. These sleds are great. You start at the top, above the city, about 6,000 feet almost. They come down. These guys are drinking wine the whole time before you get in these sleds. So, yeah. But they get you down there, right to the center of the city. It's quite an experience. Don't miss it if you go there. This is a Portuguese Madeiran cemetery. And because of the density of population, these graves are recycled. And that's the point of this picture. Because of the land use issues in the urban area of Funchal, graves are recycled in that part of the island. This is a historical building. This was where the sugar cane was brought, and it was made into alcohol, actually, and sugar. This was the refinery of an Englishman by the name of Mr. Hinton, and if you speak to any old Madeira people, they will recognize the name. And there's the brinco that's on display at one of the tables here is a typical percussion instrument that is used in Madeiran folkloric dances. There's one here, and we have a couple here tonight in this room. And you'll see it's made with dolls, and everything on there moves and makes a little bit of noise to help to add to the festivities. And the sun does set on the island of Madeira, but it never sets in a Madeiran person's heart. Let me tell you, it just keeps going. So they're pretty lively and they're pretty happy, just like all the Portuguese. I'm not one of these guys that think, my island or my village or anything is the best. I'm not even Portuguese. I'm born in the United States. But I get a charge out of this, as you probably all do, otherwise you wouldn't be here tonight. But if you're Portuguese, you've got to be proud of it, and if you're married to one, you've got to be even prouder you did it. So. Anyway, thank you very much.
From the Bay Area, and they will be here in just a minute. Hold on. Picture at your table. There is some passion punch. Okay. White. The garden that we're gonna have a place grounded. Everything goes over here.
You hear when they said that the approximate location of Madiera is about the same latitude, longitude as Bermuda? Yeah. One's very, they have a lot of Oh, Been around a few years, yeah.
Everybody else was
But I was true to my word. I never took Latin. I had. Yeah. Well, church finally wised up. When the English was all people saying. Was good read?
Stuff that's reading back. He said it's back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I made some new changes.
No, it's something else.
Oh, Joe? Yeah, I believe that.
You go back there. It's like that.
Lots of holes. I know that's what I heard. Some of the modern by cars. What do? Especially getting there by motorcycle or car or something. Oh yeah. Saw Brady was off his Indian River kill or Fleming Arrow. Yeah. Oh yeah, the right bricks. Yeah, oh yeah.
I think once they put the sound wall on the trailer park side, I think this would be freestyle.
Yeah. I think it's one of those. We were thinking about moving. We looked at a house over off of Hazel. Hazel Road. Yeah. Right off the road there. Your road going like 4 in the evening. Land all the time. Oh yeah.
It's a good time.
That's kind of what we're looking at also. Probably maybe yeah, it really is. Yeah. Yeah, we've been kind of looking, not with any real earnest, but now with everything going on around there, and out there going a lot of how to do
Yeah, I went there and talked to the realtor, and he said, well, I'm college on real estate, so I think you guys are selling houses for the first time. So we took the house.
I don't know. Market right now is real off.
We have 3 neighbors. I don't think so. We saw that as a writing handwriting. That was one reason. Another reason I wanted is I got motivated to do this. We're like the first street on, we're the first house in the street to sell. There's a couple of them that sold a lot. But real static. So I said, these people get good jobs. Everybody who needs time.
Same thing, white? Okay.
Unless I got something different. Unless I got a different white.
You got a different white. You want to try it?
Sure. That's what we're here for.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to continue eating eating and enjoying your meal. Now remember, we are all in Madeira tonight. We're enjoying the typical Madeiran food. The first thing you had tonight was a watercress salad. You noticed? Watercress is part of the diet of Madeiran people. They grow this in their, even here in the United States, you can find watercress growing in the backyard, or watercress growing in Madeira itself, in somebody's yard. It also, in the salad, we had tropical fruits such as mangoes and papayas, which represent the island. The island is a tropical island, and we have mangoes, papayas, grapes, bananas, etc. So that was in there. The second thing you're eating, you're finishing eating right now, is chicken soup. I want to tell you that chicken soup is very traditional in Madeira. There is no Madeiran family on Christmas time who goes to midnight mass and doesn't come home to a large pot of chicken soup. This is called canja galinha. And it is also traditional, we were talking at our table, they're traditional to eat chicken soup at midnight on New Year's. You know, right when it strikes midnight, have some chicken soup. After you finish eating and enjoying your chicken soup, you're going to have a choice of two types of food, either fish or the barbecue meat, carne de espeto, espetada. That's very typical. Okay, first of all, you have to remember that Madeira is an island surrounded by water. That means the people would get their food from the ocean. And what's in the ocean? Surely not cows, right? The fish. It's the chickens, right? Excuse me. That was the easiest way, the easiest food to get, and the cheapest food to get was the fish from the ocean. The special food was the red meat, because many families did not have red meat available to them at all times. So fish, they would eat more fish than red meat. Red meat would be only for special days of festivities, great, special celebrations, the festivals that you saw in the slides. There was carne de espeto, there was the red meat and the skewered beef barbecue. And along with that, on your plates, you will have the bol do caco, which is the bread made by Mrs. Adish, which was also in the picture. This bread is baked or cooked in a clay pot. Okay, it's cooked in a clay pot. It's not cooked in an oven. And some people would use a slab of concrete or whatever and build a fire underneath, and the bread would be cooked on that slab. So we'll have some of that this evening. In addition to that, we will have couscous, which was also made by Mrs. Adish. I told you at the beginning that couscous was part of the Moorish tradition that came to Madeira from Morocco. And this is a very difficult thing to make. It takes many hours, and you at least have to have 2 or 3 people helping you to do this. So I hope you appreciate the labor of love that Mrs. Adish brought to us tonight. Also, one more thing that you'll find on your plates this evening is something called pipinella. Pipinella is the chaioli pear, or the prickly pear. I don't think, if you go to any Portuguese home here in the United States, there'll be a vine in the backyard growing with these chaioli pears, the prickly pears growing on them. It's a very important part of the Madeiran diet to have this prickly pear. It's prepared in a very special way with a little bit of onion and tomato, because the prickly pear itself is has a very bland taste, so you need to have some kind of seasoning or some kind of flavor added to it. To finalize our dinner tonight, we're going to have some Madeira wine. That's special wine. And in addition to that, a Madeira cake. The Madeira wine cake. The typical cake, Madeira wine cake is very traditional, but the most typical cake is something called bol de mel, which is the molasses Christmas cake. And that's made with molasses. Where do you get the molasses? From the sugar cane that would grow on the island. So tonight we have the Madeira wine cake made with the Madeira wine and the molasses. So we have the two things, the wine production and the sugarcane production represented in your dessert. So I hope you enjoy your meal, and this is a night in Madeira. You're really there, okay? Thank you. As you can see, we can't stop her. She's wound up. That's what usually happens to people from Madeira. They're very, very happy people, and they love to sing and they love to dance. What we have on is the traditional costume. One of the things I want you to kind of remember, this is from Camacha, the Camacheiras. And what you will notice is a very colorful costume. It represents all the colors of the island, the beautiful flowers that you find on the island. One thing to remember is that those flowers, most of them were imported. People who visited the island would bring various plants and flowers that remained on the island. So sometimes Dutch people would go over and say, oh gee, we have these in Holland too. Well, maybe 100 years ago or centuries ago, the Dutch brought it to the island, and it stayed on there. And you can notice the boots. Okay, you know, Madeira is an agricultural area, so this is the boots that the women and men would wear to go and work in the field. So that's why we're wearing these boots. Okay. I wanted to explain to you something that I didn't explain to you before, and I didn't do justice to this lady, about the couscous that you ate. It takes an awful long time to make, and various steps. So I've been asked to explain what these steps are. The first thing you do, and she's going to help me, because I've never seen this made, but yes, the first thing you do is you have to have flour and water. And you take the flour, and you add the water little by little, and as you add the water, you kind of use your hands to lift the flour, so that the flour doesn't become like a dough. We don't want it to become like a dough, but we want it to become granular, like rice. So she continues to do that for maybe 2 hours. Yes, 2 hours of lifting the flour, lifting the flour.
Because it's Christmas.
We make for Christmas, it's tradition. If I don't make it every year, I think Christmas has not come to me.
Following that, you pass it through a sieve, you take this dough and you pass it, you roll it through a sieve, and back and forth, back and forth. That takes another hour. And then she takes all of this stuff and puts it in a cuscuzeiro, which is sort of like a colander, but the holes, there are only holes at the bottom of this colander. And she puts the colander on top of another bowl with water in it, so it's steamed. But you have to be very careful that you have to put some towels inside the colander so that the couscous will not become humid, it will not absorb the moisture. The towel will absorb the moisture. That takes another hour. Okay. Following the cooking process, she goes and she rolls it again through the sieve one more time. And after that, she takes it outside and lets it dry in the sun. So this is not something that takes just 25 or 30 minutes. It takes hours, and she has to have help. She cannot do all of this by herself. So you may have 2 or 3 people working with her to be able to produce this wonderful couscous.
But it was nice, very nice. Yeah.
It's a labor of love, she says.
I enjoy to do this job every year because it's tradition and something different. I thank you for to like it.
I hope you all enjoy it. It's something different. One different thing about this couscous, it has savory in it. you know, the savory. That's what gives it the unique taste. And the savory is used while in the process of making it too. So it's not a yellowish color, it's kind of well, it's sort of like a smoky color, you know. And that probably is due to the savory that's used in the process. And it's cooked with a savory again. I think this couscous was cooked with a little chicken broth. The cook here, you know, according to her recipe, you need to use some kind of flavoring in it besides the savory, maybe some chicken broth to give it a little more zing and not be so bland. So thank you very much. I enjoyed it. I can hardly walk, I ate so much. This is a brinco.
Castanholas.
As you can see,
Bonecos de castanholas. Deixa passar essa nossa brincadeira, que a gente vamos brincar do bolinho da madeira. Deixa passar essa nossa brincadeira, que a gente vamos brincar do boneco da madeira.
I was the lucky one that got to sit next to Fernanda and hear how she made the couscous. I was just amazed at what the work that she had gone through. Several hours of making this, and it was my favorite portion of the whole meal. It was delicious. And you didn't know we were going to do this, but we are so thankful that you did this. We wanted to present you with some flowers on from the Portuguese Historical and Cultural Society. Please take them with our sincere gratitude and a small gift. Thank you very much for making this night so special.
Thank you very much. I don't feel to get the flowers, but I'm looking at flower lady. And a friend in the little apartment in Thornton, I come and I bring my basket with flowers from Madeira. I'm a flower lady with a tourist card from Madeira too. But I never expect to get no flowers today. So thank you very much, everybody. And you'll have, I think we'll come in next year. Agora sou florista também. Não ajudarei a gente.
They're facing it once more.
Thank you.
Sabe, foi aí, sem literatura.
Fortified wine was sort of discovered as these wines were shipped from Europe to the Americas. And in the process, many times the wine would sour in the bottom of the ships. But they found that if they added alcohol to it, the wines would actually better themselves on the way to the New World. So, you know, it does have alcohol and it gives it that rich flavor. But I wanted to say that Madeira was the favorite wine of the American colonists, and it was the favorite wine of Thomas Jefferson. And it's also said that there are a few signatures on the Declaration of Independence that were signed in Madeira wine. So, you know, when you think about it, it does play a role in American history. So enjoy it, and it gave you your separation from the English. So, Bella.
In other words, the flow side that goes into the Constitution, because there are wine information.
E ele cansou de bastante. Deu bastante para cozinhar para esta
You gotta be in Twitter for him.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. I was really proud to be a part of this. My wife Barbara is downstairs. When she puts on clothes like this, she gets a little shy, so she chose not to come upstairs, but if you want to say hello, she is downstairs in the kitchen. This is our third year, I believe, and it's always been a pleasure to cook this meal. It's always a challenge for us to do food that we've not done before and certainly work with some ingredients that we've never even seen before. The couscous was certainly one of those, and it was a challenge, I must say. Hopefully it was prepared properly in the way that it should have been. The fish you had tonight I thought was very nice, the tuna, and that was a little parsley sauce on that. Again, these are foods that are from my ancestry, and although I don't know a lot about them, again, they're always fun to work with, and we hope these dinners continue somewhere, and we hate to break this tradition because it's certainly great to see this many people, although we always hope for more, but they're still a very vibrant group, and that's great to carry on this heritage. So thank you very much.
I'm going to turn the mic over to Virginia, but I've lost her. There she is, because she's going to share a poem with us.
I didn't sleep too much the past few nights thinking about this dinner. So last night, in one moment of inspiration, I wrote something, and I want to share it with all of you. I have to wear glasses. This is the aging process, just like the good wine that you're drinking. The title of my little work of art here is called Madeira. And Madeira, you are the island of my heritage. You are washed by the azure waves of the Atlantic and cooled by the gentle breezes. Your mild tropical sun beats down on the wet rocks of beaches, lending them a shine that diamonds would envy. Madeira, your mangoes, papayas, bananas, grapes, passion fruit, all hang proudly on terraced plots and are harvested by skillful hands. Your bolo do caco, cuscuz, carne de espeto, peixe espada, milho frito, satisfy the most gourmet of palates. Madeira, in your dance, you tell your story, and in your music, you talk about your people. Your multicolored costumes, woven by your people from the fiber of the land, attest to the beauty of the many colorful flowers from all parts of the world which bathe in your soil. As I look down at your villages, I see thatched roofs and tiled roofs side by side, a benevolent contrast between past and present. I take out my embroidered hanky, the labor of love of a village woman, to dry my tears as I say goodbye to you. There are many things I love about you, but I especially like the idea that you are ever present, even when I am away from you. Thank you.
That was very beautiful. Thank you, Virginia. Thank you, Cynthia, because you shared part of your life with us and your food with us, and you shared a little bit of your soul. Thank you very much. You're free to go. You're free to stay. I thank you again for coming. This night is important to me because of my own heritage, and I thank these ladies for sharing a little bit of their heritage with us. It's also Doug's heritage, and that's why this was a fun night to do this. So you don't need to leave, but you can, and I thank you all for coming. Good night.
Don't go away, don't go away. I would also, as president of the Portuguese Historical and Cultural Society, I'd like to also thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. But more importantly than that, I wanted to take this time to thank Carmen for an excellent job. That's an easy one, it's obvious. Excellent. Everyone knows, anyone who's done anything like this is a tremendous amount of work, and it takes a lot of a person's time, it takes a lot of effort. And anyone who knows Carmen knows that she's had a lot going on in her life this year. To say that she's had a full palette of things to do this year would be an understatement. And she could have used any number of reasons or excuses to either back out or push this onto somebody else, but she didn't.
Yes.
And I wanted to thank her for that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Baby.
Madiera for the night.
Do it in a higher voice.
Look at my hair. On the top of me. I'm heartbroken. I really am heartbroken. I'm dead.
There you go, Tar.
Hi.
Say hi, Dad. Hey,
Look
Paul.
at, here's Kitty. Here's Kitty.
Kitty, 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 kitty. Let's see Joseph stand up. Big
Here's
boy.
Kitty, kitty.
Look at this big boy. He's
Kitty,
3 months
kitty,
old. Look, he's
This
already
guy is
standing.
3 months old. That's about
Hi.
31 days. 3 of those. 3.
Hi, sweetie. Hi, sweetie.
Boo 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 boo. Boo 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 boo. Boo 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 boo.
Hi, sweetie.
Boo 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 boo. Boo 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 boo.
I don't know if I like that. Stand up. Stand up. Look at you. Look how big you are. Hey, look at them. Yeah, hi. Hi, sweetie. See my nice physique? See my nice physique and my little dum-dum? Yeah. Whoop.
Where'd it go?
Do you know where that bear is?
Yo, leopard, what you doing, dude? Yo, leopard, what you doing, dude? This is a beautiful bear. Listen to this. Yo, leopard, what you doing, dude? Go on with your conversation.
Good leopard. Look how cute she looks right now. Look at the kitty. Look at the kitty. Hi, kitty. You're so pretty. That's a pretty cat.
Sit over there.
This is Men of Integrity cap.
Hi, baby. Hey, baby. Hi, baby. Hi, Joseph.
Look at those big eyes.
Hi, Joseph. Hello.
You like that, Joseph? Yummy, yum, yum. Yummy, yum, yum.
T-bone steak. T-bone steak.
Get his feet here. Look at his little feet he has. His big feet.
Yeah. And there's Mommy-O and
Yes.
Poochie-O with his Promise Keeper's cap. Man, yeah, go.
And there's
And
baby.
there's Leopard. Here, kitty, 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 kitty. Good kitty. Good kitty. Good kitty. The battery's really low, Pooch.